person who's scheduled for 10 a.m. So
Wow.
great morning, everyone. Welcome back to Chai Together. I am your host and founder, Pratibha Day. Today, you are tuning in for your cup of courage, hope, and imagination. We use courage on this platform to showcase our stories. We use hope to overcome, and we use imagination to resonate and understand with the stories that are being shared. So today, I have with me my friend, Mr. Demetrius Irick, aka Akili Flow. Tell me more about that name.
So Akili is Swahili for the word mind. And so mind flow is designed or was created with the concept of clearing your mind so that you can receive the messages or get in tune with the frequencies of the God or the universe so that you can live your life in your purpose. So Akili Flow was, as a coaching organization that I created to help individuals reach their potential or their life mission.
Woo. So where do you want to start about your journey? You want to throw it back to your childhood?
Absolutely. Well, since we want to talk, I want to talk about in this platform. We talk about mental health. I think it's important to understand my particular journey. I was raised in a small town in South Carolina. It's called Orangeburg, South Carolina, a very small town, and both parents, working middle class. I am the middle age of three boys that was growing up in my household. And, as that middle child syndrome, I struggled with attention, trying to figure out where my place was in the family structure. I didn't realize how that really affected me until I got older, to be honest with you. Because, at my stage, growing up, I realized earlier my oldest brother was the first, and he automatically got a certain level of attention. I came along 7 years later, and he's all in his life and his expectancies and his family, my grandparents, all of them took care of him, and so I come in 7 years later, and I was the only planned child.
Wow.
So, I just came in and I found myself trying to figure out where I fit in early in elementary school. I remember being praised for grades and being, honor roll student and stuff like that. So I assimilated to focusing on school to get the rewards, so the self rewards for my parents and my extended family. 4 years later, my little brother pops up. Out of nowhere, this guy comes from, steals my little joy, and my little moment, and so now I'm in this family structure where I have my oldest used to getting attention. Now I have this baby boy that everybody just loves because he's just a ball of energy. He just go nonstop at an early age, just into everything, and some of it wasn't always great. So he got a lot of attention as the baby boy. So fast forward as I got into school and I started going into high school. I started to realize I realized that I was getting attention through my grades. So I was an honor student, perfect attendance, all those things, all the way up to high school. But I also was like the blunt of, I was almost missing. I was almost hidden, And so I kind of leaned to my neighborhood. I'd grown up in a neighborhood of drugs and all that other stuff that associated with it. I started gravitating to those individuals for the attention. And, I ran with a certain crew, certain different individuals in high school, and it landed me in a place mentally where I felt that was what I needed or what I wanted. It served the purpose for my life at that particular time in high school. It was the first time I started getting the girls. Nobody wanted to be, nobody wanted the little short, fat guy with freckles, and being teased. And I had been called pretzel face. And, kids can be mean, man. I had acne, man.
Mm-hmm.
Very bad acne, man. And I just remember not being the one that everybody, gravitated to. So I was the ugly duckling of my crew in my headspace.
Oh.
Um,
I used to be the ugly duckling too.
really,
Yes.
I hard to believe.
Yep, believe it.
And so, I suffered with that for a moment internally, and really didn't realize why I was gravitating. I never broke it down to that level. Wisdom kind of brings you, when you do self-reflection, start to see some of those characteristics. But why I gravitated to that for those attention, and I started getting that and running in the street, and and just doing all of the street life stuff that come along with it without going into every detail. But you're hustling, you're selling drugs, you're trafficking, you're doing all of these other things that that came with that life. And the only person in my family structure throughout that whole time that really gave me the focus and made me a priority in my mind was my grandmother.
Aww.
And so my grandmother made sure that I had all the attention, all the love, and all that, because she noticed it. And so she would make sure that she would literally call me and make me come to her house, literally stay down the street from her. And she would call me, come see me, it's just like, why, what is that? Just to hug me and kiss me. Something as simple as that, And my grandmother died in 1994, and for me, that was the most tragic time in my life. I went into this deep depression, and it lasted almost 10 months, almost a year.
Wow.
And I remember attempting to commit suicide. And at this time, I was had already graduated from high school. I was running in the streets, and I remember my grandmother stopping me one day, and before she passed, and she said she had a dream that I died, and whatever I was doing, I needed to stop. Now, my grandmother at the time, she's about 4'11", about 300 something pounds, right? And so she walked all the way to my parents' house, and it was 5 or 6 o'clock in the morning. So this dream woke her up, and she wanted to make sure that she could lay her eyes on me. So she walked all the way to the house, and she gave me this stern, awakening, get your life together type thing, And it was literally less than 2 months later, she died.
Wow.
And that really, really shook me. And it shook me to my core. And it was one of the first times of my interaction with death at such a close level. And it just took me in this mental spiral. I was in school at the time, dropped out of school. I was working, stopped working. I was just, I was depressed. And I remember my father used to always keep a gun, and he didn't know I know what it was, but he had a .32 revolver in his dresser drawer. And I went to that gun, and I put one bullet in it, swung the chamber, and I put the gun to my head, cocked it. And I made this vow right then and there, I'll never forget it. And I said, God, if you have any plans for my life, if there's a God and you have any plans for my life, and I'm supposed to be alive and I'm supposed to be doing something, you need to give me a sign that an idiot, I mean the most dumbest person can realize, and ensure that I'm not tripping. So at that time, and it's crazy, literally within seconds, I heard a car door slam. And it was my mom coming home from work. And in a moment, in a split second, God showed me my mom walking through the door and seeing my head brain splatter all over the place. Took me through this vision of her and her emotions, her feelings, her crying, her seeing this, her holding herself accountable for it. Took me to a funeral. So, and I saw literally that my family on the front row, saw myself in the casket, saw her blaming herself for not doing enough as a mom, knowing that I was in depression at that state, really not knowing what to do. All she knew how to do was pray and 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 take on that burden. And I saw all of this in a split second. And it was that moment that I awoke to a concept that my life had meaning. And so I at that moment is when I said I'm going to live. I choose to live. And from that day forward, I began to slowly come out of that depression. It was a process, and it didn't happen overnight. And actually got in trouble, got in a fight with a police officer. In today's society, I would have been dead by that alone. But I got in a fight with a police officer that landed me in jail, actually. And I wound up doing 4 years in prison for fighting police officers.
Wow.
And it was during that time frame that I was incarcerated that I kind of got my focus. I came back to reality. I got my purpose. And my purpose at that moment, I got the level of clarity, was to be a change agent in somebody else's life, to be able to tell my story, share my story, share it of not only the mental health issues, but being in prison, and not only being in prison, getting out of prison with the mindset that it will not define me. And after 4 years in prison, I got out. I started working at McDonald's. I was the happiest fried cook at McDonald's. People did not understand where my joy came from. I was flipping burgers, smiling, doing these, flipping burgers and doing fries and smiling. And people didn't understand where my joy came from. And I worked my way up from, that to a management level where I managed the McDonald's. And then I took that and I went to Foot Locker and I managed Foot Locker. And I became a store manager. And then I went to another company and became the store manager, and where I eventually became a district manager, managing 12 stores, 350 employees, $24 million in sales, sitting at the boardroom with corporate America individuals making decisions that affect and impact people's lives. So I went from, this mental health breakdown to prison to the boardroom, and so I truly believe that, first of all, if I didn't, if I would have went through with those plans, I wouldn't have been here to share that story. But part two, though, is that I've been able to affect so many people's lives in a positive way that it's only through the process that you understand why you had to go through it and why you were chosen. Because so many people didn't make it. And so many people get depressed and they take their life and they don't get a chance to tell their story, and I think that for me, mental health is very near and personal, because it's not something that just goes away. You have your moments, some days, we can be our hardest critic, our individual selves. We can be harder on ourselves than anybody else can. And so you can get in a dark headspace, and you have to be able to recognize when you're there, and shift that momentum to see the other side, or give yourself a day, or give yourself 5 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever it is.
Yes.
Reach out, reach out, and don't make life-changing decisions based off of that emotion at that time. And a lot of times we can't see that when we're in the midst of that darkness. And I say this because, even after being able to accomplish all those things, man, I remember being at that stage again. After all of those accomplishments, wrote my first book, and told my story in that first book, Journey to Manhood. And I remember being married 17, 18 years and having the divorce, and I lost my purpose. It seemed like my whole life was being a father and a husband And after my kids were grown and my wife and my marriage was over, I didn't know what to do with myself. That was my identity. At that time, in my mind, that was who I was. And when all of that was gone, I didn't know what to do with my life. I was like, why am I here? You were such a failure. You're not able to, be a good husband. There's so many. I was, gone a lot, so I wasn't home a lot to raise my kids. I'm thinking that as long as I'm providing, I'm doing all I'm supposed to do, and not really getting in tune to, as a man and as a father, you set the tone for the household if you are leading the way that you should by inspiring, teaching their spirit, not financial stuff, not just being a provider, but being a father, someone that fattens through the spirit and the soul and develops that individual and see that person as a spirit, not just a vessel or not just a physical form. And this is stuff that I learned after my kids was grown. This is what I learned after my divorce, and it was like, you get so caught up in your day to day that you don't realize, really realize, or you don't focus on and spend time on what truly matters, and that's the relationships. That's your family and that family structure, and developing those people for longevity and that everlastingness. And so I can ramble, but that's kind of how I felt at the time. So,
well, I hope I never go to that place, to where you're so consumed by all those other things. I don't know. I feel like I'd be miserable if I ever went to that place anyway, me being how I am.
Right.
So you mentioned your books. So I want to know, will you show us your books and tell us about them?
So the first book is called I'm Finally a Man, A Husband's Journey to Manhood.
Oh.
And so this
is that a baby picture?
Yes. This was that child, that childhood picture of myself. And then that was about that journey. This really speaks about that time in my life as a teenager, hustling, street life that led me to prison. Taking the time to self-reflect and change my mindset, and it goes all the way up to me being a regional director, district manager, and all of the lives that I've been able to impact through this story and this journey at the time. So this was the first book, and then I went after all of that, I came back to the source that allowed me to really focus on that inner me. Mm-hmm. It was meditation that got me in a mindset where I tapped inside. I went inside to see what I needed to heal. Mm-hmm. And why I was feeling so dark about myself. Why I wasn't living in my own truth, or what facade or face was I putting on for the world and wasn't being authentic to myself. And so that was a scary part. That inner work wasn't that easy, but it was meditation that really got me to sit down with myself. And I remember sketching out the book at first and going through that process of the inner work, and listening to myself and even to healing some of that childhood abandonment, or what I thought was abandonment, and not realizing and releasing my parents. It's like I held them to a standard that I didn't to a standard that they didn't understand. I didn't even understand. It was unrealistic. And so you have to get to a point where, like, I'm holding at 40 years old. I'm holding on to something for 30 years, 40 years. Like, what is that all about? And so, when I talk about meditation, it can bring up some things, some
Mhm.
some emotions and some memories that you held locked away, and don't really get a chance to really talk about or think through. And so for me, meditation, I always, especially in my community, it's not something that's spoken about. Mental health is, first of all, not spoken about in my community. So it's like, I'll beat the crazy out you is what I've been heard. I heard a lot,
Yeah.
So it's an ancient art that I realized, it's really truly
Mhm.
beneficial if you spend some time alone, and it doesn't take. I always try to tell my students and my clients that it doesn't take 30 minutes or an hour. It doesn't require you to wear any special clothing or to be
Mhm.
in some monk position. It literally could be done in 5 minutes. It literally could be done on your ride to drive to work. It's really just focusing and spending some time within and checking into yourself. And as I got exposure to it and I started learning it and seeing the results and feeling the results and mentally getting clarity. I was like, I got to share this free tool to the world. I was like, people need to know this doesn't cost you anything, and you can get in a better headspace. So that's why I wrote
Hmm.
meditation for beginners. And
You talked about the family dynamics and those ridiculous expectations from parents. I can only imagine, what it is on a parent to take care of yourself and the responsibility to take care of, let's say, it was 3, 4 kids, and to equally give your attention to each child. You know, I don't even know if that's possible, but
yeah,
there's been times where, there's someone else who had told me that they felt also neglect or abandonment when their parent did not pick them up to comfort them when they were crying. And they remember that moment from childhood. And to the parent, they didn't perceive it that way. They didn't even see them. So how could they pick them up? But to the child, it was, oh, I was neglected, but the parent didn't even see them to comfort them.
right,
But they're holding on to that for years and years that, my parent neglected me. I feel like it's so easy to hold on to something when you don't even know how the other person perceived it, and you're holding on to this negative connotation of it the whole time. That's why, like, hypnotherapy, I feel like, is a really good tool. And that's when you go back, into your childhood or any time in your life that you need to heal. But meditation definitely is one that definitely works for me, without needing to need anyone else but yourself.
right.
So,
And to your point, I think, as I remember, I remember talking to my dad, and I was like, Dad, how old were you when I was born? And he was like, man, I was like 26. And I'm like, at 26, you already had 2 kids,
wow.
and in my mind, I'm like, I'm thinking back to when I was 26. I just had my first child, and, and
Yeah.
she was really just being born. And like I alluded to earlier, mentally, I wasn't prepared to invest in that child on a spiritual development level. The only thing I could do was make sure I provided food and shelter. And that was my main focus. Now,
Hmm.
as I put myself in my father's shoes or my parents' shoes, because I mean, my mom was 25, so I was like, wow, you got these young kids raising kids, and I'm holding them feet to a fire for something that realistically it's just not feasible. And so I had to get to a point where I could release them, and stop kidnapping them in my heart with whatever I assumed
Mm.
was their neglect. And it was meditation that showed me that, and gave me that sense of clarity to be able to be like, yo, y'all did the best that you could with what you had at that time, and I thank you for it. I thank you for it. Yeah.
What are people's comments to you? I know you're in Atlanta. Like, does anyone make any comments, you being a Black man who's in this field of work? Or has it grown to be
You know what?
accepted?
I will tell you
Yeah.
it's a lot of work. Number one, it's definitely a lot of work. Um, I always put myself in positions where I have individuals that I am around that encourage me in the health and wellness and the mental health aspects. Because they encourage me to continue to get in this fight and they help me, and I have other Black men that I do yoga with that have the same headspace that I deal, you know what I mean, that I have that same headspace with. But at the same token, I find myself as this bridge where I have to have that for my own self being, but I also have to go back and try to help bring somebody else to a better headspace as well. And by exposing them to, these tools, yoga and meditation and mental health. And so, yes, to answer the question, there's some people like, yo, I don't want nothing to do with that. I have that's some hocus pocus, or that's the devil. I've heard, you know what, that is the devil, and you know what, you practicing Satanism, and all of that. I've heard a whole lot, but it goes back to the level of ignorance that we have, and never taking the time to really analyze things. We take whatever the world gives us, whatever the news tell us, or whatever someone tells us. We don't ask the why. We don't do the work to determine if that idea is something that you truly believe. We just accept it. This is what it is. We don't even ask questions. You don't even, and it's crazy that we have in today's technology world, we have access to everything. Right? Everything. Like literally take 5 seconds to type it into Google and you'll get a trillion answers. You can just scroll through the first 5 in the first 2 pages, and you can get you a good assessment of whatever it is you want. And it's crazy that we have such accessibility to so much wealth and knowledge, yet we have become so ignorant to everything. And so it just amazes me. I remember, we fellowshipping with some other Black men that we were doing our yoga, and and I had a pastor to just interrupt our yoga session, and he went on to talk about how we were worshiping the devil because we weren't because we were doing yoga. And one of the things that I realized, because we were just wrapping up our session, was that I wasn't about to allow him to steal my energy and my flow. I was like, I was like, now this is like this. I was like, in my mind, I'm like, now this is what that negative energy looks like. Yeah. But I remember wrapping up that session, and I just, I told him, to each his own. You believe what you believe. I believe what I believe. I don't believe my creator is trapped to one particular set of rules. I said, nature and the universe shows me he's bigger than that. So that's my belief, and I'm not trying to force my belief on you. But thank you for your input, and I excuse myself. I would refuse to allow him to badger me and beat me down with his belief. I was not going to be in agreement with his belief, and you have your right to do what you want to do. So.
Someone stated, I don't know of any religious practice that does not ask of its followers take time to focus inwardly and settle your mind. Yeah,
absolutely. And I didn't even want to open up that door. Like I'm telling you, part of me wanted to do that just to be that antagonistic person, be like, the Bible has like 119 references of meditating. Like, don't get me started. I don't want to go there. Don't get me started. I'm not going to allow you to mess up my Zen moment. But I'm like in every like the user just said, in almost every religious affiliation, they require you to take time to self-reflect. And I tell my students that, especially those that are in a religion, prayer is where you reach out and you ask God for whatever. You speak to him directly. I said, but meditating is when you sit still and receive his message. It's like you get quiet and you receive it. So it's not designed to be, against whatever your belief system is. It's literally to help you get in tune with the frequency that you want to worship, or whatever you decide to do. It's just one avenue, one tool set to help you be a better version of yourself. That's it. So, I don't really go all into that, but that can be
That's why education is so important. But there are people who are, traditional, and the information has been passed down generations to generations, and that's what they, want to follow through and stick with, because it's just from back in the day, and that seems to be right. But that's not true. Also, people used to smoke cigarettes all the time, and it caused cancer, right? So that wasn't true. Cocaine and Coke bottles, and it's like, that doesn't mean that was true. Like, that doesn't mean that's the right thing. So interesting. I don't want to lose track of your third book as well, and I know you're writing more books now.
Well, yes, I actually just had one published. A Reflection in Time was just published. I don't even have that.
Wow.
I don't even have that one in
print. Do you write on a daily basis?
Yes.
Wow.
I do at least 15 minutes to 20 minutes a day. So this was one. Yeah, this was one that was a piggyback from the first, and I had a lot of women that said that their husband was not going to read this book because they had a woman on the cover. So I rewrote it. I rewrote the concept and focused on the Black male who definitely need this.
Let me tell you something. I just want to add something transparent to this. I was talking to someone recently who is a Black male, and I feel they can use some alignment. As in, I was romantically speaking to someone, and I feel they can use some being some emotionally involved with themselves and affection and things of that nature. So yeah, Black men can definitely use that, but men overall.
Absolutely, men overall, absolutely. Men overall. I mean, we have a long way to go when it comes to that.
Especially older men.
especially older men. And to piggyback on that 1 second, man. I remember growing up, my father was like, I never received a hug from my dad. My dad never told me he loved me. And it was because, that's what he was taught. Men they're not emotional. They don't show emotion. But now my dad is of age. He's 76. He has Parkinson, and he's starting to see himself and his life differently. And he's the first person to call me now. Like, how you doing? I just called to check on you. Everything's okay. Well, I love you. It's like, what who is this guy? Who is this guy?
Because he knows he's gonna pass on.
Yeah, and as you get older, you start to, your mortality starts to hit. You start to realize that life is, is about relationships, and I should be having a better relationship with people. Right. And I think that with meditation and yoga and all these types of concepts, it's really designed to put you with your humaneness, get in touch with it, and not be this hard vessel, this rock, but to be this emotional being, to tap into that emotional side. Yes, be your physical masculine self, but don't forget that you are both emotional and masculine, and you have to find that balance as that masculine energy. We're derived from man and woman. We have both, so we have to be able to tap into it. Women deal with it more, so y'all have an opportunity, and it's okay for y'all to be emotional. It's okay for y'all to deal with that. For men, it's not. I remember being in a grocery store, and a mother was beating a 5-year-old son.
Wow.
Because he wanted something, and he was crying. And she was spanking him, saying, don't beat, you can't, men don't cry. Men don't cry. And she was spanking him in the grocery store. And I walked up to this lady, and I said, that will be an emotional trigger for him for a long time if you continue to teach him that. And we wonder why men grow up unemotional, that hide their emotion and that don't know how to deal with their emotion. And you, as a female, all you want is them to show you some type of affection, some type of emotional connection. Society wants a woman or a man to have some type of emotional connection. That's what you want. But then everything about society teaches men to not show your emotion, be hard, and we are raising males to have this characteristic. And so then you got these men that don't know how to deal with their emotion, and that's what they've been taught. So we have to figure out a way to understand what masculine energy looks like. And that doesn't necessarily mean you have to be in control of everything. Masculine energy is one that produces an environment that's healthy for everybody. And so you have to be able to be in touch with that and to respect that feminine energy. Because you, as a man, know how difficult it is to deal with emotion. So you respect the female masculine energy even more when you start to get, and when you tap into yourself and you realize how you can be an emotional roller coaster. And this is what meditation and yoga can teach you. You can have some roller coaster moments as a male once you get to that. And it's really because it's new to you. You're forcing yourself to deal with something that has never been taught to you or has never been brought aware to you. So it's new. And so it takes time. With anything, it takes time for you to get a balance of it and a good understanding of it, and be able to operate in society without being afraid to say, "Oh, I don't like the way that make me feel." You know what? I'm not going to allow you to talk to me like that. I'm not going to allow you to project what you're feeling on me. This is how I feel. This is what I believe, and that's it. So now we have these kids or children that don't know how to deal with emotions, and there are so many studies about how meditation has taught kids to be high functional just by dealing with their emotion. This is what meditation is teaching kids at a younger age. There's schools in Chicago as well as in California that meditation is a part of the practice.
Yeah,
it's part of the practice, and they're raising healthy-minded and emotionally intelligent young kids. And that's what's important for our society. We have to get in a mindset where every human being respects another human being. But you have these, most mass murderers are men. Realistically, because we don't know how to deal with that anger and emotion. Look. I don't even want to go there. But look at the COVID. Look at COVID. The countries that's ran by women have less death. I'm just saying, like, we need to stop treating, women like they don't matter. Like they're the most important key to this world, And so we have to figure that out and be able to compliment them and understand how we play such an important part in this world that we live. But we went all over the place right now. But I think it's important because men are not taught. And then we have this vicious cycle of men not knowing how to deal with their emotion, and we teach that to kids. And then you have generations of heartless men, and then men making decisions. There's decisions being made by men on what women gonna do with their body. What is?
Hold on, we talked about that last time when I spoke on your podcast. No. I don't think so. Why? No. You already know me. The answer is no. No. Like, that's it.
No.
Yeah. I want you to share your podcast with everyone too. Tell them what your podcast is.
So I have a podcast called Life's Journey.
Oh.
And
Don't try to copy me.
I had to follow the proven pattern, but Life's Journey is truly designed for everyday people to share their life experiences with the inspiration and the hope that it helps another individual that may be going through what they have already accomplished, and or give them another view of looking at it. You never know what somebody else's story, how similar it is to something that you may be going through, and it could help that individual be in some dark times.
Yes.
And some of the stories, man, I tell you, some of the stories my guests have shared with me, it motivates me to suck it up and stop crying. You know what I mean? It's like, you think that it's the old saying, when you think you got it bad, there's always somebody that had it worse. Always. And so the moment I started to hear some of my, man, it's like, you know what? I ain't got nothing to complain about. I have nothing to cry about. I'm going to get up. I'm going to do this work. I'm gonna get up and do this work, because there's so many people that's out here that has gone through and accomplished way more obstacles than I could ever think about. And so I have no time to cry. I have no time to have a pity party. Get up and do the work, And so as long as we're alive, as long as I'm alive, my job is to make this world a little better than I found it. That ultimately, that's my motto.
Yeah. And I wanted to mention, so, New Zealand is run by a woman, and, they had 0 COVID cases. So they weren't allowing people from the US to come there. I know some people who live there, but clean, and they're doing amazing. And that is run by a woman. So come on now. And we over here like vomit. Like,
right. And it's crazy how I don't know. It just doesn't make sense. It really don't make sense. I don't understand it.
So it's amazing. So what book are you writing now?
So last week, on the 24th, I released a book of poetry, and it was reflection. It's called Reflection in Time, Memories of Love and Pain, and it expands a 20-year. About 25 years from my first love to my child, and the love that I have as a father for my daughter. But it really talks about this journey of understanding what love is, and making horrible mistakes in relationships, and being able to get to a point where you own it. And be a better version of yourself. And for me, it has always been like, even when I can't find or muster the headspace to succeed for myself, I got a little seed. I got a replication of myself that's in this walking in this space and time that inspires me to be a better version of myself. And so I constantly, when I'm down or I'm feeling a little lonely or I'm in this by myself, I realize I have a representation who happens to be a female that, that's still that's in this world that I need to make better for her. And I also wanted her to understand that her dad has emotions, that her dad has feelings, that her dad made mistakes, that her dad didn't treat women well, at one point in time. Yes. Yes, it was a journey.
It's okay. I used to be a player too. I was talking to like 7 guys at the same time. Oh no.
Yeah, so it was a journey to get to a point of respecting, relationships and respecting different people. So it wasn't easy. And that's why I believe I had a daughter. It definitely made me look at women differently after having a woman, after having a child. So it was definitely like, okay, no, you can't be acting like this. So,
wow.
But that's one that just was released last week. I am working on 2 books right now. One is a book of inspirational daily motivational quotes and words of inspiration. It's going to be 365 quotes on it for every day. And then next year is the 10-year anniversary of my first release. So I am doing a 10-year anniversary release of the Finally a Man, a Husband's Journey to Manhood. So I'm going to do a 10-year anniversary with some expounded chapters on it and some some commentary from some of my friends that have helped me become the man that I am today. Throughout.
Wow.
So that's what those are the two projects that I'm working on currently.
That's awesome. I wish I could say the same, but I'm not a man. So funny. It was so awesome having you on here today. Thank you for your time.
Thank you guys for having me, man. This is an awesome platform. Thank you for doing, man, and all the work that you do to help mental health.
I know. I can't still believe it.
Yes. You do an amazing job.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Keep it up. Keep it up.
Yeah. And thanks everyone for tuning in, and bye for now. Have a great day. Okay.